and welcome to the third talk of ICT March Colloquy. So we are honored to have Professor Ashwin Patwardhan as our speaker today. Professor Patwardhan is head of Department of Chemical Engineering in ICT Mumbai. He has done extensive work on membrane separations, computational fluid dynamics, and liquid extraction that are reflected in his 126 research publications. He is fellow of Maharashtra Academy of Sciences and Indian National Academy of Engineering.
It's okay, Joyita. I think we can just start. And no point.
Okay, sir. If you say.
we are one institute, so there's no point in.
Yeah, so we had some new students, so that way I was just for their sake I was interested.
No formalities, please. Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Sure.
No issue.
Yeah. Okay.
So okay, let me start sharing my screen. Yeah, so is the screen visible? Everybody is able to see properly?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks. So what I thought I would talk about is a little bit about kinetics of tea infusion. We have all had tea at some point of time. We have all made tea at some point of time. And just wanted to talk to you some things about how fast tea gets infused, how do we characterize all that, and finally what are some of the engineering principles that we can apply to even everyday situations like these. So for all the students that are there, so all these principles you are going to learn in your various courses. You might have already started learning some of them, but what I have tried to bring in is a bunch of all the engineering principles and to apply that to this supposedly a simple process. We brew tea and we drink tea, but do we really know what are we drinking? Do we really know how fast the infusion process is? And more importantly, uh, how do we mathematically model all these things? So it is not just enough to do an experiment unless we are able to describe the process mathematically. The description of the process becomes incomplete. So I'll just try to show you some features from this. It is appropriate. So this is a process for making black tea, or that's what we drink, right from plucking to withering, oxidation, fermentation. So we are not going to go through all of these. We are going to look at this black tea granules as our starting material, and either we brew the tea, that means we put these granules in hot water, boil it, and we drink tea, or most of the Western world uses a tea bag simply because of its convenience. So I'll try to show what is the difference between what we brew and what the rest of the world sort of drinks. So many components are there. These are not even the tip of the iceberg, right? So this is a more of an area of natural product chemistry, but we are not going to go into that. I just wanted to show you the kind of complex structures that are there, and the only structure possibly we are familiar with, or the one that we drink tea for, is this caffeine structure, and then there are derivatives of the structure which are present in many forms. We are looking at this structure. One more reason I am showing you this is there is a common feature, and that common feature is the gallic acid, and we are using this as a sort of a marker molecule to characterize how fast our infusion process is. It is appropriate that we talk about this particular slide, especially since today is the World Environment Day, 5th June. So typically when you brew a tea, you have 2 grams of tea. If you brew this tea for a long period of time, extended period of time, out of these 2 grams, you will find that about 1.2 grams is insoluble material. basically a plant material. That's why it is so much insoluble material is there. Soluble material is about 0.8 grams. So that means 40% of the tea that we brew is actually can in principle come in our cups. If you take 2 grams of tea, take 100 ml water and boil for 2 minutes. Typically, you will find that out of this 0.8 gram, only 0.4 grams come into your tea. Okay, we are not talking about the taste of the tea. We are not talking about the kind of flavor, aroma, all those things we are not talking about. We are just talking about very gross things. So out of the 0.8 grams, only 0.4 grams are coming in your teacup. That means if we look at our chemical engineering principles, we have got our yield of 50%. The rest 50% is undelivered. It is going as spent tea. That's what we throw in our dustbins. In terms of the original quantity out of the 2 grams, we have sort of overall process yield. If you like to calculate, out of the 2 grams, you have only got 0.4 grams in your cup, which means 20% only. So we are dealing with a process where our yield is 20%, and we don't realize all this. If you say that, for example, in your ethylene oxide process, maybe you have studied ethylene oxide process. If we say in our ethylene oxide process the yield is about 85%, selectivity is about 85%, it is very good, and people try to make it go to 86, 87, 88 or 90% even today. If you look at polyester manufacturing, one of the components, terephthalic acid. So terephthalic acid yield from paraxylene is close to 98%. Right? Compare this with the 20% delivery that we are talking about here. So you see that it's a very, very non-green process, and obviously there is a scope to enhance that 0.4 grams, and more importantly, try to understand where this 0.4 gram, why it remains undelivered. So the objective for our work was more like, how do I improve the delivery of these soluble solids? One of the ways is to do trial and error, do lots and lots of experiments, and try to figure out what is the most optimum combination of temperature, pressure, particle size, and so on. Or we could have a more better engineering approach, is to look at all the fundamental steps that are involved in the process, and then try to predict, try to make a model of the infusion process, either in the loose tea form, which is more applicable for all of us, or for the rest of the world. Can we make this model for tea bags? So that's what I'm going to talk about for the next maybe 35 minutes or so. How do we model, and what are the fundamental steps involved in the process? So if you try to recollect from your CRE lectures, what we try to do is we try to break down the whole process into steps that are convenient for us, or steps which we understand as engineers. So if you think about this as a tea bag, we are dipping this tea bag in hot water, and if you try to think about the process, some of the first thing that happens is water goes inside this tea bag. It is taken up by these tea granules. So these tea granules swell, the soluble components dissolve, and then the soluble components come out through this granule, through this tea bag, and into our cup. So if you think in terms of the several steps that are involved, one of the steps is external mass transfer from the tea bag to the particle. We are not talking even about this external mass transfer from the bulk of the cup to the tea bag. So one, there is a mass transfer resistance. Second important step is the swelling of these tea granules. Third, dissolution. Fourth, once the dissolved components are there in the water phase, that has to come out. So again, mass transfer through the leaf, and then again back external mass transfer back outside into our cup. So if I can quantify all of these steps, if I can write a rate expression for all of these steps, we would be able to characterize, or we would be able to model our tea infusion process. So what I'm going to take you through in the next half an hour is to take you through this journey of all these steps. So we investigate all these steps one by one, and then we will see at the end of the session is how do I have a complete model of this whole process. So first thing that we start with is this swelling process. Before we start looking at this swelling process, what I need to do is look at how do I characterize what is coming out of the tea bags. And I have showed you so many components are there. It is practically impossible to measure all these components. It is practically impossible to quantify all these components. These are not even the tip of the iceberg components, right? So even if you do HPLC, even if you do GC, you are only going to get maybe 20, 30 components, but the actual number of components coming out could be in hundreds. So we need a model, we need a marker, and the marker that we are going to use is this gallic acid. So what we try to do is use this gallic acid as a marker, do a calibration in terms of UV visible spectroscopy, and try to quantify what is the component that is coming out that would have an equivalent gallic acid concentration. You will have a mix of all these components coming out, but they can all be characterized. Concentrations of all of these can be characterized by an equivalent gallic acid concentration. It's just a marker, it is just a way of quantifying the process. Second, of course, if you're looking at this polyphenols delivery, so there is a very standard method for measuring the polyphenols. We are not going to look at this today. You can also do HPLC. We will also not look at this today. Another thing that we do is not just look at one wavelength. So 270 nanometers tells you what kind of gallic acid equivalents come out, but also very important from a tea drinker perspective is what is the color? Is the color reddish? Is the color brownish? Is the color orangish? So that all is measured in terms of UV absorbance at 445 nanometers. So this is our sort of experimental protocol, the way of characterizing what comes out of the tea granules. Just a little bit about what modeling is and how do we model this process. So if you think about your classical reaction engineering kind of thing, you have a packed bed reactor. You can have a model at a reactor level that will lead you into algebraic equations. You can go to a particle level. You can go to pore level. Finally, you can go to a molecular level as well. So if you go from a big scale, like 10 raised to 0 kind of scale, to 10 raised to minus 9 nanometer kind of scale, atomic scales, you have molecular modeling at this end of the spectrum. So as you go from this left hand side to the right hand side, your spectrum of complexity of the model is increasing, but at the same time, the kind of information that you obtain from the model is going up from left to right. And of course, the very important parameter is what is the time and what is the cost of solving this. So when I say time, what I mean is computation time. When I mean cost is what is the impact of not knowing the actual molecular level interactions. Okay. So as I was saying, this, if you try to model at a large scale, you will end up in algebraic equations. If you try to model at a particle level or at a pore level, you will end up into differential equations. If you try to look at the interactions, molecular interaction levels, you will end up with partial differential equations. And you can see that how the complexity of the model keeps on increasing as we go to lower and lower scales. And this also means that all the maths courses that we learn, they are very, very important, because in those maths courses we see generalized methods for solving all these problems or all these model equations. Okay, so taking you back to these various steps. Now we will talk about all these steps one by one. So first of all, we will talk about loose tea infusion. We'll talk about swelling. We'll talk about infusion profiles of various components. And then we'll talk about mathematical modeling of the loose tea infusion. And I'll do this part in little bit more detail. And in the subsequent part, when we talk about the tea bag kinetics or tea bag modeling, we'll do that very quickly because I've already spent all the time in describing the various steps and various modeling strategies for these processes. Okay, so first of all, we are going to look at swelling. So if you look at the tea granules that we get, it's not just one particle size. You get a whole bunch of particle sizes. So if you see, this is the as received components, right? So this is the that's how broad the particle size distribution is. You have particles which are right from 1 micron, 1 millimeter, that's 1000 microns, all the way up to 3 millimeters. So what we try to do is we try to sieve this down or take narrow fractions. We also try to grind this down and get a smaller fraction. So we get one fraction like this, which has typically a particle size of about 0.2 microns, 0.2 millimeters, 200 microns. The red spectrum about 500 microns. This green spectrum about 1000 microns or 1 millimeter. So for the purpose of this making the model, we need a good control on what our input is, and you get a whole bunch of particle sizes. So we need to sort of narrow down in terms of particle sizes so that we can do controlled experiments and we can quantify things properly. So if your distribution is like this, or for some other case, let's say your distribution is something different, you will get a totally different behavior. So we do experiments with these narrow particle size distribution particles. So one of the ways we do that is to look at individual particles, use photography. So with respect to time, this particle that is there at the center of this beaker, we try to measure how fast it grows, and we use image analysis techniques to find out what is the area occupied by this particle, and from that we can get an area, get an estimate of the diameter and get an estimate for the swelling. Remember, it's a 2D picture of a 3D swelling phenomena. So you are taking a 2D photograph, but actually the process is 3D. So you have to convert this into an equivalent diameter and convert that into the volume. Or one of the ways in which you can do is to take a burette or a measuring cylinder or a conical funnel, whatever, or separating funnel, make a bed out of this tea granules, put some hot water and measure the increase in the bed height, and you can get a measure of the swelling. So you can do this in different ways. You can look at particle level, you can look at a bed level, and the results are very very different. So if you think about looking at individual single particle swelling, so if you look at these squares, they are 0.64 millimeter diameter particles. These triangles are 0.9 millimeters, 0.91 millimeter, and this is 2.5 millimeters. So you can see the percent volume change is much lesser for a bigger particle as compared to the smaller particles. Smaller particles tend to swell a lot more. Interestingly, when we try to do this kind of exercise, either in a separating funnel or a burette or a measuring cylinder, you can see very dramatically the swelling, extent of swelling measured in terms of the percentage volume change is dramatically different depending on how high bed I take or what is the depth of that bed. So if I take a 57 millimeter deep bed, I get a swelling of about 8-9%. But if I take a bed of about 17 millimeters, 20 millimeters, 2 centimeters if you like, you get a swelling of about 20%. That means in a closed environment like a burette or like a separating funnel, these particles are hindering each other for their swelling, right? So you want a bed, if you want to make these particles nicely swollen, you want a bed that is shallow enough so that all these particles can swell to a very large extent. So extent of swelling, especially in food kind of applications or natural product kind of applications or natural product extractions, ingress of water, swelling is a very important step for us to get material, the water soluble components out of that material. So if you don't swell the original material to a large extent, you will get the extraction also to a smaller extent. So extent of swelling is different for different particle sizes. It also depends on the bed height. Next important thing is, how do I model this? Obviously, modeling single particles is very complicated, in the sense that there is so much uncertainty, because you're looking at one particle and you need to know measure. You need to know the diameter of each and every particle. So obviously, this is a very tedious kind of exercise. You can start looking at bed as a whole, because when we start going to tea bags, it's a bed of particles that are there in the tea bags. It's not individual particles anymore. So what we wanted to look at was, how do we model the extent of swelling? And there are various simple models that are there. Again, some more data about height of the bed, some more data about how what is the diameter of the bed that I make in a measuring cylinder. Do I make a 6 millimeter diameter, 10 millimeter diameter, 16 millimeter diameter? And the extent of swelling depends also to a small extent on how wide my measuring cylinder is. So if you try to characterize swelling, there are various models that account for swelling. These are pretty pretty much simple empirical kind of models, and these are just used just to quantify the swelling process. So you could look at the kinetic parameters. You could look at the how what is the shape of this swelling curve, and these two constants that are there in the models describe the shape of this model. The advantage of doing all this, now we are not going to talk anymore in terms of percent volume change or extent of swelling. We would try to make things dimensionless. So that's one more thing that we as engineers do, is we make the observations dimensionless, so that different phenomena could be expressed in a unified manner. So for example, if you talk in terms of percent swelling versus time at different temperatures, so you have 50 degrees centigrade here, 60 degrees centigrade here, 70 degrees centigrade here, 80 degrees centigrade here. So every temperature gives you a unique signature. But if I try to make it dimensionless in terms of a dimensionless swelling parameter, that is more or less independent of the temperature. So all I have to know is the final extent of swelling, and I have to know these parameters in my model. So this helps us to generalize. Once I have a dimensionless curve, it helps us to generalize for any particle size. It helps us to generalize for any temperature, rather than doing experiments at every condition. Okay? So that's one way we try to make sense out of the large body of data. So what are the concepts that we have looked at so far? Using dimensionless numbers. Second is, look at the time scale of swelling. So if you recall any of your process modeling kind of lectures, or process dynamics kind of lectures, 63% volume change is like your one-time constant. So if you look at 63% here, the dimensionless 63% change, you have a time constant of about 40 seconds, 50 seconds of that order. So that's the kind of time scale for the swelling process. Just remember this number, about 50 seconds, 60 seconds, don't worry exact number whether it is 66 or 50 or 40. it just tells you that swelling process takes about a minute. The rate constant for that process is about a minute inverse, if you like. Okay. Next important thing that we can get from here, if I characterize the rate constants of these processes, I can get a measure of energy of activation of this swelling process. Now, why this energy of activation is important? The extent or the value of energy of activation tells you what kind of phenomena is happening. So if your energy of activation is about 3 kilocalories per gram mole, recall from your CRE lectures that 3 kilocalories per gram mole is typically like a diffusion process. So the diffusion of water through the tea leaf is a sort of a rate controlling process. It's not any breaking of chemical bonds because of water that is happening when the water is going and the leaf is swelling. It's not a hydration kind of um, um, process. It is more of a diffusion limited process, and that's why the time scale is fairly slow. The next thing was to measure the infusion profile. So if you look at the gallic acid coming out in terms, all the components coming out characterized in terms of the gallic acid equivalent. So that's what this stands for, GAE, gallic acid equivalent. So if you look at this gallic acid equivalent as a function of time, you can dramatically see two different regimes. You see a first regime here, very high rate process. Maybe if I take a pen and let me draw, maybe that will help us to sort of visualize. If you see, you can see two time scales. One time scale is a very fast time scale like this, wherein the soluble components are coming out. You can see a second, much more gradual process of infusion. Right? So unless we characterize these two steps, and you can see them everywhere, you can see them for all temperatures, you can see them for all particle sizes. You see one kind of time scale and you see a second kind of time scale. And incidentally, look at this time, the switchover or the changeover time between these two processes is about a minute. Is about a minute. Right? That's what I was talking to you about. It's about 1 minute. Okay. Next thing that we wanted to look at, the sort of funding organization, in this particular case Unilever, wanted us to look at was in their plants they make teas using various different processes. So they wanted us to look at what kind of process they have in their plants and what kind of infusion profile you would get. So standard CTC machine, standard CTC tea, you will have this kind of profile, these blue diamonds. But if you do something else to the tea leaves while the process of fermentation is going on, while the process of drying is going on, you can get a dramatically different profile, extremely high rate of infusion coming out of these tea matrices, of these tea granules. Okay, these two kinds of things in the old days, when I say old days, I'm talking about, let's say, something like 80s and 90s. People ignored, as a first step, these two processes that are happening in parallel. People try to express this by a simple first order model, and obviously the simple first order model will not fit because there are two scales of process happening. So people just arbitrarily incorporated a constant in the model. So you, instead of using y is equal to mx like a typical first order process, you have y is equal to mx plus c, and as c becomes a fitted parameter just to describe the process. It helps us to some extent to describe the process, but it does not really take into account the physics of the process that is happening. So you can obviously do all this for different temperatures, different kinds of teas, and you can find out their energy of activation. You can find out how good the fit is. You can find out what is the observed first order rate constant, and you will find that the first order rate constant goes up as the temperature goes up. Also, it depends on the type of tea that we are getting. In chemical engineering principles, reaction engineering, you would have learned, or you will probably learn about a concept called as Thiele modulus. So this Thiele modulus tells us what is the kinetics of the process, or how fast the kinetics of the process are as compared to how fast the diffusion processes are. And we relate all that in terms of a parameter called as Weiss-Prater parameter. And if this parameter is far, far greater than 1, then you know that it is essentially a poor diffusion kind of controlled process. So what we are trying to do is you have the kinetics of the process in terms of the first order rate constant. That's an overall observed rate constant. And if you characterize this in terms of the Weiss-Prater parameter, you will find that for different particles, the Weiss-Prater parameter is very different. So if you take large particles, this Weiss-Prater parameter is about 10, 11, 12, 15, 20 of that order. Right? But if you take fine particles, 0.41, like a tea dust, you will have a Weiss-Prater parameter of something like 1. That means even for the smallest particle, there is still some amount of diffusional limitations that are coming into picture. And if you go to large and large particles, obviously you have extremely large diffusion limitation. These are not pore diffusion per se, because there are no pores. You're talking about a leaf matrix. So it is diffusion of the components through leaf matrix. And this is one reason why the process is so slow. You see, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes it takes to reach an equilibrium. So if you boil your tea for 15 minutes, you will get all the material out, right? But who has the patience, who has the time? And not just that, we also have to worry about the quality of the tea. If you drink this kind of tea, it will be undrinkable, it will be very, very bitter. So if you brew it for, let's say, 1 minute, that's the kind of flavor that people like, where you get about 20%, 30% out, and you have a nice flavor. So all these things that we are talking about, we are trying to quantify, we are applying engineering principles, but don't forget, it's a food product. It's a product that people are going to eat and drink, and therefore taste and people's preference is also very, very important. Okay. So it was interesting for all of us to see that even the smallest kind of tea, you have significant diffusion limitations that are there. Just to put this all in perspective, if I plot volume change on the x-axis, percent volume change, so that's a measure of swelling, versus the gallic acid equivalent that has come out. Okay. Look at the two extremes. If the swelling kinetics was very, very fast, or if the swelling kinetics was very, very slow as compared to infusion kinetics, your infusion will happen very quickly, but the particles will swell slowly, and you would have got a blue curve. Whereas if your infusion kinetics were very fast as compared, if your swelling kinetics were very fast as compared to infusion kinetics, you would have got this red curve. That particles have all swollen nicely, and then the infusion starts. Right? Whereas the actual experimental data is somewhere here. Right? It is neither swelling controlled nor it is infusion controlled. It is very important to take both swelling as well as infusion into account when we try to build a mathematical model. And all these previous papers that were there, all these previous models that were there, they ignore the infusion, the swelling kinetics. They assume that swelling is instantaneous. That assumption obviously does not give a good fit. So it is fitted by deliberately adding a fitted parameter so that you get a nice fit. Obviously not a good scientific approach. Good scientific approach would be to know, now we know that swelling kinetics are important. The infusion kinetics are important. Both are equally important. Neither one is very fast as compared to other. So we need to account for both of these processes. Okay, so what we started doing is writing a model for a particle level and incorporate. It's sort of a moving boundary problem. Now, if you start writing a diffusion in spherical coordinate system, you will have this dr by dt. So dr by dt is like your moving boundary. Your particle is swelling. At the same time, diffusion is happening, right? So you try to solve this with a moving boundary in terms of the radius change for the particle that comes from the swelling models. All of these now you can put in and you can solve the resulting second order differential equation, and you can predict your profile, right? So these triangles are the experimental data. This black line is a model that takes into account the swelling as well as infusion. These diamonds are experimental data. Black line is the fitted is the model prediction, whereas these dotted lines, they are the kind of fitted models which are empirical in nature, which are describing it as a pseudo first order process. So obviously, if you don't take this into account properly, if you don't take into account both the swelling and infusion kinetics, you don't get a good prediction. But take both into account and you will have a very nice prediction irrespective of the particle size. So not just small particle size, but for big particle size as well. Okay. Okay, so now with this background, now we can go very quickly into infusion from tea bags. So first of all, we need to measure infusion in tea bags. And one more resistance is now coming into picture. How do we characterize the resistance offered to this transfer process by way of the paper from which that tea bag is made? Okay, so this is what we are going to talk about. Again, very quickly, we'll talk about all these steps. We'll talk about the additional resistance offered by this tea bag paper. Okay. So for doing these kinds of experiments, we again use our burette kind of setup. And depending on the shape of the burette, you see dramatically different swelling behavior. And that's because particles that are there in a bed, they hinder each other. They hinder the swelling of particles which are nearing or neighboring particles. Then we need a method for doing controlled dipping. So we can have a device for having a controlled rate of dipping. We can't rely on students to dip this at a fixed rate. Obviously, it's if anybody has seen old Charlie Chaplin movies, in which the Charlie Chaplin works in a factory doing the same thing again and again. I think it was called Time Machine or something. I don't know. I forget the name. But doing repetitive things is very boring for humans. That's why you need a device to allow you to change the frequency of the dipping. So you can have 2 dips per minute, 5 dippings per minute, 8 dippings per minute. So you can vary the frequency. And you see that very importantly, if you compare the gallic acid equivalent with respect to time for loose tea, that is this dash, gray dash or a gray minus sign, versus any of the tea bags. So if you see these tea bags at a different dipping frequency, all the time, the infusion through tea bag is much smaller than infusion through the loose tea. So definitely the tea bag is offering some kind of hindrance because of the constriction that happens in a bed of particles. Okay, so we characterized all that. We characterized different shapes of tea bags as well. So what you get in the market is something called as a double chambered tea bag that looks something like this. But you also get single chambered tea bags. You also get circular tea bags. I don't see this very often, but you get a tetrahedral kind of tea bags as well. And then you can compare how infusion profiles of different tea bags are there with respect to the loose tea. And again, you will find that all these tea bag shapes, they are much lower than the loose tea infusion. We need to characterize the tea bag paper, and we need to kind of characterize the resistance offered by these tea bag papers. And Again, looking at sustainability, earlier people used to have a cellulose and those kinds of papers, cellulose acetate kind of papers. Nowadays, these papers are made by polylactic acid. So they are more sustainable. Lactic acid comes from a biosource, and therefore it is more renewable than acetic acid or than polyester, which comes from crude oil. So you could characterize these by using a scanning electron microscope. You can sort of manually go and measure what kind of porosity you have, and you can put a pore size distribution that you see based on the surface. You can also measure the permeability. So if any of you have done membrane separation processes, and maybe that as an elective, key bag paper you can put here, you can put a colored tea solution here or an infusion here, you can put distilled water here and try to measure at what rate the infusion comes out, and then you can find out the permeability of the tea bag paper, and we can characterize all that now in terms of the permeability of the paper. You can look at different papers and how different papers behave, what kind of permeability you get from different papers, and how it translates in terms of the profile for gallic acid equivalent as a function of time. All this information now you can put in the form of a mathematical model. So if you think about a mathematical model, if you want to make a model for this, one of the important steps that we try to do is try to um, relate the phenomena that is happening to a model situation which we can describe mathematically. So if you think about dipping of tea bag in hot water, you can think about this in two steps. You can think about there is a outside a vessel and there is an inside vessel, and there is communication between the inside vessel and the outside vessel. And as chemical engineers, we would always, one of the first things that we will try to do is we will say that both these cups or both these vessels are well mixed. So you could write a well mixed model, and you can write the rate of mass transfer from these tea granules, and you can write the exchange. So if you have done RTD kind of studies in your undergraduate course, residence time distribution, we have models where two CSTRs are connected to each other by an exchange process. So this exchange flow rate Q tells you how much volume of water would come in and go out per unit time. That would bring out the enriched infusion, and that would take in the fresh water into this tea bag. And again, you can make all this dimensionless to find out what are the important dimensionless numbers. You can think in terms of various dimensionless numbers. You can think in terms of a mass transfer time scale for the loose tea that we have seen. You can think in terms of the mass transfer time scale for the process in the tea bag. You can think about the mixing time scale, so volume divided by flow rate, residence time if you like. You can think about a diffusion time scale for the particle, L square by effective diffusivity. And to compare the mass transfer and diffusion, we typically define a Biot number. You would have defined that for your heat transfer course, but you can define that for mass transfer process as well. And then depending on the Biot number, we know whether it is pore diffusion or not pore diffusion. In this case, the diffusion through the tea leaf that is controlling, or the external mass transfer that is controlling. And all this you can calculate. All this you can verify based on all the measurements that we have made for loose tea, for the tea bag, and you can actually predict the infusion as a function of time. Again, I'm repeating, we are trying to predict dimensionless numbers, and you can see that the dimensionless concentration versus dimensionless time is independent of the operating process. It is independent, whether it is 2 dippings per minute, 5, 10, 15, what is the dipping frequency? It's independent of the dipping frequency. It's independent of the temperature. It's independent of the temperature. That's the advantage of making things dimensionless. I have a handle with which I can collapse all the experimental data onto a single curve. And I have not plotted, but this curve and this curve, they will also overlap. So if you think about dimensionless time of 2, your dimensionless concentration is about 0.65, 0.7. For 2 is about 0.65, 0.7. So not just this graph and not just this graph, but individually, if you superimpose these two graphs, they will also superimpose on one another. And of course, once you have a model, you can understand many things from the process as to what happens when we try to look at different things. So if you look at temperature, what happens to the concentrations, what happens to the concentration of infusion inside the tea bag, what happens to the concentration that you get out. And you see very dramatic behavior here. At 200 seconds, that's typically roughly the time at which we do, we get an outside cup concentration, something like this, but within the tea bag, the concentration is very, very high, dramatically high, much more 3-4 times higher than what you have coming out of your tea bag. Right? Next is, of course, this model assumes that there is a 1D process, well-mixed tank, and an exchange between them. Obviously, we need to go beyond that. We can actually do a computational model of trying to model the tea bag in terms of its tipping and how the actual flow of water is there around this tea bag, how much water will go in, how much water will come out, what is the concentration of infusion that is there inside, how much concentration will come out. Now, I'm in the interest of time, I'm not showing you this in detail, but I'm just want to show you that you can go to a very deep level for write partial differential equations and solve all these partial differential equations for flow, for turbulence, for mass exchange, and you can actually predict the velocity profile. You can predict that out of the tea bag, let's say if this is your tea bag, how much flow is coming from the bottom. Out of the flow that is coming in from the bottom, how much of it is going out through sides, how much of it is actually going across the whole bed and coming out from the top. And then based on that, you can calculate, you can predict the entire infusion behavior. So I'm not showing you this in detail, but you can actually predict. And just I'll leave you with one slide. I'll just maybe stop here. Is if the circles are the 1D fitted model, whereas these blue are the squares are the actual predictions from these circles are the actual CFD predictions, whereas this blue is a fitted number. So that's a 1D kind of model, whereas actually you can predict all the things that are happening based on laws of fluid flow. So this is what I wanted to cover, and a couple of important points I would like you to leave with is if you are trying to make if you are doing some experiments, don't just stop at doing the experiments, analyze the experiments, try to develop a model so that you can characterize your experiments better. You can explain the phenomena that is happening in your experiments based on fundamental steps, based on the physics of the problem. It helps you to gain an understanding over the process, and once you have an understanding over the process, you can ultimately improve the infusion process. Just to show you, I have taken about 40-45 minutes, but the actual amount of work obviously took much longer. Total amount of work was about 6 years. Several students were working on this project. It was funded by Unilever, and these are some of the papers that have come out of this work. And these are the actual people who have actually done all the hard work. Bhushan was the first one to sort of characterize the swelling. Geeta was looking at what kind of molecules come out, how do I characterize them. Rao Sahib was the one who did the 1D model. Pallavi did the actual computational CFD model. Durgesh did some of the experiments with respect to characterization of tea bag papers, the permeability kind of experiments. So that's what I wanted to stop here. I wanted to leave you with this summary of the work or message, if you like. And if you have questions, I would be happy to discuss.
Thank you very much, sir. So Dr. Sunny Kumar has a question which he has put in the chat box, sir.
All right, let me just open chat box. Or can you just read out? I have to sort of stop sharing and
yes,
the chat box gone.
So, yes, sir. So the question is how activation energy tells that the process shown only diffusion nor bound with baking.
Yeah. So so if you look at kinetics, that involves breaking of bonds and making new bonds. So that's a much more energy intensive process, and therefore the energy of activation is also very high. Meaning it changes very dramatically with temperature. But diffusion is a physical process, and therefore the activation energy is very small. It means it does not change significantly with temperature. Typically, the activation energy for chemical processes we describe in terms of Arrhenius law, whereas a diffusion process, if you look at, you will have, if you have heard about random walk theory and all that, diffusion process will be about square root dependence on temperature. It is not an exponential kind of dependence on temperature. That's why the energy of activation tells you something about what kind of process is happening.
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, first of all, it was very, very interesting and a fantastic talk. I have just a trivial question. Everything you are expressing as dimensionless, so I'm sure you have taken note of that. You showed that inside that bag versus outside at somewhere around 1 minute, there is a dramatical difference, but the volumes are also different.
Yeah.
Inside the bag, you might be having 3 ml or 5 ml. Outside, you have 70 ml. So that difference was not because of the dilution, right?
No, it is just the concentration.
Really, the diffusion is different.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
Very nice, very nice. It has that AWP touch.
Thank you, madam.
Yeah, you were saying something, telling.
Yeah, it is not, if you think in terms of let's say 100 units of the soluble material, and if you characterize that 100 in terms of what is inside the tea bag and what is outside, yes, obviously outside will be 90, inside will still be 3, 4, 5, 10. But in terms of the actual concentration, it is dramatically different, and it's a sort of an indication how strong the diffusion resistance is. The stronger the diffusion resistance, the larger will be the difference between the inside concentration and outside concentration.
Yeah, because I'm not talking, what you're saying is material balance. That's fine because you're not creating the component. But my point is that temporary spike could be because it is enclosed in a very small volume inside the bag. So even if it comes out instantaneously, if you're measuring it as a concentration, it will appear much less. Or because it is dimensionless, you are expressing the concentration also as dimensionless, that C at T divided by C star, whatever endpoint. Is it like that?
Yeah, it is a dimensionless concentration. It is C at T divided by C at infinite time.
Yeah, C star or whatever.
Yeah, wherein all these curves go to 1. But what I'm trying to say is the infusion that is happening inside the bag is much faster.
Yeah.
How much water you can bring into the bag and how fast you can take water out of the bag, that decides what will come in your cup.
And then I have one more comment. Almost all these bags are always non-woven. They're non-woven because it's a paper. But supposing after seeing that so much is the difference because of the additional mass transfer resistance of the bag, if somebody tries to make a fabric bag, which has a structured, it's a woven thing, which will perhaps offer much less resistance.
Yeah. So this, yeah, absolutely. This is that left side. This is the cellulose acetate, normal random woven, like our N95 mask. whereas right side is our polyester fiber. So it's actually a woven cloth. And you can see the permeability difference between them. This is for the polyester fiber. Permeability is, forget the units, but permeability is 26. And this is the cellulose acetate kind of paper. Permeability is 3 something. So there is a factor of absolutely. That much is the difference. And to that extent, you will get a difference in the infusion profile.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very good.
Yes, sir. So Dr. Sunny Kumar's question had a second part also. So he has written that in practical. So practically we give 100 degrees Celsius for tea preparation, but your study shows only up to 90 degrees. So,
yeah, I mean there is also data of boiled water. It's not shown. If you look at India versus if you look at the rest of the world does not boil the tea. So they just take hot water, dip the tea bag, leave it outside for some time. So the temperature falls, starts with 70, goes to 60, goes to 50, and goes to 40, and then at 40 people drink. So that was the range of interest because that's more relevant for tea bags. You don't take tea bags and you don't boil tea bags. You boil loose tea, but you don't boil tea bags. So our ultimate target was looking at tea bags, and therefore the temperature range of interest was even 90 is kind of high. 50 to 80 is a kind of relevant range there.
So Mr. Suman Mandal and Ms. Jidnyasa also have questions which they have posted, but I would request them to ask them themselves. Please, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, I have now accessed the chat box. I just from the graph plotted between. So Suman is asking.
Hi, sir.
Okay, Suman, go ahead and ask.
Yeah, good evening. It was really nicely explained. So basically my question is from the graph plotted between swelling and infusion kinetics, can we conclude that the CTCT which swells more needs to be kept for a longer period of time in order to extract the antioxidants?
No, if it swells more, its infusion is faster. If it swells more, look at this, swelling is higher, infusion is higher.
Okay.
Whereas this swelling is less, infusion is less. If it swells more, it infuses faster. That's a typical for any of these natural product extractions. Water has to go in, make the matrix, make the components soluble in the matrix. Hydration is first step. In any of your foods, the hydration is a very important step.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, Jidnyasa, please.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sir, for the enlightening information of today's, my questions are really basic, but I would still like to ask them. Like some tea companies offer mixed size tea leaves, like small and large size. So I wanted to ask, how does the size difference affect the taste and making time of the tea?
Yeah, good point. So let me go to that proper slide. We have particle size somewhere. Maybe I don't have that slide. Yeah, here it is. Yeah. So look at these. Look at the right side graph where you have 2.2 millimeter tea granules like this diamonds, blue diamonds, whereas 0.36 millimeter these crosses. So now if you actually take if you take this tea, if you take a mixture of these granules and you let's say boil for 2 minutes, somewhere here you stop. From this big tea particles, you are going to get this much out. From these small tea granules, you are going to get this much out. Right? And these companies, what they try to do is they try to mix and match these particles. Now, if you look at individually the big particles here, and if you look at individually the small particles here, the taste will also be different. Okay? You will have more bitter taste coming in these cases, whereas you will have more flavoring compounds remaining intact under for these big particles. So what these companies try to do is mix and match the particle sizes so that you get a final taste or final flavor which is what consumer likes. And at the same time, you need to have that reddish color, dark reddish color that is preferred by, let's say, Indian population, whereas light orangish kind of color that is preferred by the Western world. So it's a whole lot more complex than just the mathematical modeling. There's also a taste factor that needs to be brought in. That's why all these tea companies pay heavily to these expert tea testers. And then based on the testing that they do, they would have a sample of teas and mixtures, and they will actually brew and actually, if you have seen wine testers or tea testers, they would drink a little bit and then they would give a score that this tea will have this much score. And then based on that, the company makes a sort of a price for their product. So if you see the amount of money that we get for doing this project, as well as the salary that all these 5 people will get, now they've graduated, of course, all these 5 people that salary that these 5 people got, your tea testers will get much more salary than any of these graduates. That's the reality. Consumer products are more based on sensory perceptions, and companies are willing to pay any amount of money to get the perfect sensory flavor or perfect sensory taste. So some of you might just want to do, after engineering, might just want to go into wine tasting or tea tasting business. You get to drink and you get to, or even ice creams for that matter. Or in foods in general, there are people which are better off than chemical engineers, because chemical engineers deal with all these equations, whereas foods people, I always liked foods people. Whenever we used to go past ICT corridors, foods corridor, nice smell used to come, right? Somebody baking a cake, undergraduate practical and all that. Whereas when you go through chemistry lab, you will get smell of acetic acid and ethanol and acetone. So you might want to change your specialization.
Sir?
Yeah, madam. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, I had one more question.
Yes, please.
Sir, the energy of activation for the tea you had mentioned, like, is it like, how exactly is the energy of activation calculated? Does it depend on the amount of tea you have taken or the type of tea which you choose?
Oh, it depends. Oh, no. Okay, well, let me clarify. The energy of activation that you saw here, that was the energy of activation for the swelling process. So what you do is you quantify the rate of swelling. So this is your rate constant for swelling, if you like. And you plot log of rate constant with respect to 1 by temperature. That tells you a energy of activation, E by R. So this is coming from there. I don't think I have a graph of ln rate versus 1 by T. But yeah, I mean, it depends on, so if you start actually doing it for infusion and look at 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 degree infusion and try to do this for different teas, you will find slight difference in different teas arising out of the swelling behavior. Okay.
Sir, and last question.
Yeah.
Sir, I did not understand the concept of bed height. How is it used?
Yeah, so see, when you have a tea bag, what are you doing? In your tea bag, you have all these particles. You have a bed of tea particles inside a tea bag, and that's getting dipped back and forth, right? So if you want to do an experiment to measure the swelling, to measure the infusion, you better try to reproduce similar kind of conditions that you have when you are actually doing the infusion. So therefore, we try to use a burette or a separating funnel or just a simple measuring cylinder, and we try to make a bed of particles like here. So for example, this is your measuring cylinder, if you like. You make a bed of particles, let's say 1 gram tea you take, you fill your 1 gram tea in this, and then you put hot water from top, right? And then this bed will actually start swelling, and this bed will expand because the granules inside the bed are swelling. And then that's how you measure this percent volume change.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Sunny Kumar, you can ask directly to Patwardhan sir.
Can I ask?
Yes, please.
Yes, sure.
For the flavored tea bags, if that flavored content will matter, that swelling, infusion, all that things.
Absolutely. It does matter. It matters how fast.
The flavored ingredient and the tea leaves.
Just ask your question again.
You gonna measure different separately for the flavored ingredient and the tea particles, or will combine both and then measure this swelling, infusion, all these things?
So one thing that we wanted to stay away from was from the flavor exercise, right? It is not a simple exercise. There are, in some of these Unilever tea testers that are there, they characterize, there is a whole bunch of parameters, something like 20 parameters in which a tea is graded. Just like you are graded in 7 subjects in one semester or in one quarter, teas are graded into some 20 odd parameters. It ranges from bitterness, astringent taste, so many components are there. So that's one thing we wanted to stay away from. We don't want to take away their jobs. So let them do their job properly. Let us do our job properly. Let everybody have a coexistence, peaceful coexistence. I mean, just to answer your question, yes, the extent of swelling will decide what kind of components will come out and how fast they will come out, and that is something that will decide the taste. So if I have to actually predict the taste, it can be done. It's not that it's all that difficult. Only thing I will have to do is this concentration equation that I have solved. We have solved it for one component, gallic acid equivalent, right? I will need to write this equation for some 50 odd components, and I will have to write this balance for every component CI. So rather than having one partial differential equation, we will have 50 partial differential equations to be solved. Of course, we will need that much experimental data to work out these parameters like diffusivity, and therefore exercise becomes that much more complicated. So we don't want to get into the tea taste business.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Sunny Kumar. I think you might be having some problems. I will just read out his question. He has asked that can bag material affect the taste of tea?
Yeah, bag material, can it decide the taste? Bag per se is inert, so it does not decide the taste. The kind of influence that it has on infusion, yes, it is there, but it is not a very dramatic influence. So it makes a difference to a small extent, to the extent that I showed you the difference of permeability. To that extent, yes, it will make a difference of the taste. Some permeability something like 26 or a permeability of something like 3, 4.
Mr. Nathan, you want to ask? I don't know, but people are putting questions in the chat box. Okay, I will ask her. I will read out.
Wait. Now I can access.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So Sunny Kumar. Now next is Narasimha Murthy. Was there any sensory evaluation done on the extracts? No, sensory evaluation we did not do. Because finally the taste should be appealing. Absolutely. That's why these tea testers get a lot of money, much more money than you and me who write mathematical equations. So no sensory evaluation. No, we don't want to get into that. Anything else? Any other question?
Anybody else?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, what if we make the bag only of flavored? It will not affect the particles.
So
tea
you
particles.
mean, yeah, I mean, you can make a bag which itself will have some elutable component, something that will leach out and give you a flavor. That's a good idea, novel idea. You can work on that definitely, and absolutely. I mean that all those things can be done. People do different kinds of things. People put different flavoring material inside. So if you have seen instant teas, if you have had instant teas anytime, Girnar has instant teas, or Wagh Bakri has instant teas, or even Society has nowadays instant teas. So you get a powder and you just put that powder in hot water and voila, you get your tea. Uh, so yes, people do put different flavors, ginger flavor and lemongrass flavor and masala flavor. Yeah, so all these things are very much done.
Okay, so anyone else wants to ask anything? I think that was all, and thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
this refreshing talk. The talk as refreshing as tea itself.
No, definitely not. We still, all of us will still go back and after get away from our computers, we'll go in the kitchen, have a cup of tea, and then
Yeah,
we'll start our next activity. So
yes, and do remember all these things while boiling tea.
mathematical equations are not enough to fill stomachs and satisfy our taste buds. So they are interesting from a different angle, but we still need the real thing to keep us going.
Yes, but now we are in the age of virtuality, so it is virtual tea. It is like.
Okay,
Thank you
great.
very much, sir.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah.
So nice talking to you. Let's hope we'll meet one of these days.
Yes, sure.